All right, DJ Carey is on the line. Evening, DJ.
How are you, Nathan? How are you?
Very well. So the reason we have you on is because, if people don't know, you're the manager of the Kilkenny minor footballers rather than the hurlers, and you were in action this week in the Leinster Championship, beaten by Louth 3-16 to 3-8. And I guess the reason it's notable is that this is the first time that the Kilkenny minor footballers have entered the championship since back in 2016 when they took an almighty beating against Wexford. So to get to this level, to get back playing championship, you must be pretty pleased.
Yeah, Nathan, it was nice. I suppose 3 years ago I had a conversation with the then County Board Chairman, Ned Quinn, and we had a good discussion on it, and he felt, well, the best thing to do was to pull out of the minor championship and maybe start at under 14 level, because guys who would have played a huge amount of primary schools football, they wouldn't be long gone from it. So whereas a 16, 17-year-old would, football wouldn't be promoted in the clubs in Kilkenny, so we'd be getting him reasonably ripe. So we decided, myself and Seamus Norris, Donald Carroll, Thomas Roster, Angela Cullen, we got together and decided, look, we'll put in an effort, and maybe now it would have been next year we were looking at, to be honest with you, Nathan, for the under-18 minor championship at that time, but since it was changed. So we were looking at making sure, the big thing was to make sure that Kilkenny would be competitive if they ever put a football or hurling team on the field.
What was your interest level in football? Why did you take such an interest after that Wexford defeat back in 2016?
Well, I suppose, Nathan, most people that would know me or would have heard me speak in the past, my passion would be, all things that are local and Kilkenny, and maybe my club. Kilkenny, or my club and Kilkenny would come first, and as I said to many people, over the years, and I would have been offered maybe managerial jobs in other counties, and the one thing I always felt was, whatever my time, or even a lot of the Kilkenny players, our time is needed back in Kilkenny at present, and so it's more of a pride thing that we were either going to pull out of football altogether and not do it, or put in an effort, because those guys that played 3 or 4 years ago in the minor championship, they went out to do their best. The management prepared them whatever best way they could, but it wasn't good enough at the time. So that's what my interest was to make sure that if we ever did it again, we would be prepared.
It's hard to overstate just how far off the pace, and it is minor level, so we need to take that into account. But in the 6 previous championship games, Kilkenny had scored a grand total of 1-3 and conceded some huge scorelines. So it wasn't doing anyone good, particularly for young players like that who you're trying to keep an interest, and listen, they're participating, they're playing inter-county football, they want to be involved. The attitude around the county when you said, you know what, I want to dedicate some time to this. I want to see if we can rejuvenate it to a level, which you did this week, where you're competitive, that players can go out and they can leave the pitch with their heads held high. What was the attitude around Kilkenny?
I'm sure it was okay, Nathan, to be honest. I don't do social media anymore, and I don't do any of that anymore, so I wouldn't hear an awful lot of, whether it was on. But I'm sure it was okay. But beside that, whatever that attitude was, my big thing for young fellas is that you don't ever have to give up a sport, or you don't have to give up anything until you really have to give it up. Now, when does that happen? That might happen when you're 17, 18. But I said to these guys that if you think that in 4 years' time you're going to be on the Kilkenny minor team, think again, because 4 years, there's an awful lot can change. And guys who are a year younger than you, they might become better, might become stronger. Your interest might be there. So don't give up a sport thinking of something in 4 years' time. Give it up when you have to. And only in the last maybe month or so, or whatever it was, 2 or 3 weeks, we did lose players to the hurling, minor hurling, but that was okay, because we still, at that time, we had 40 young fellas training all the time. So we still had 34 who had put in a huge effort, right, or 36 who had put in a huge effort, and we continued. So that meant they were ready to play. Now, albeit we're a long way behind Louth, we're a long way behind Wicklow and Kildare, who we still have to play, even further behind Dublin and Kerry. But like I would say, if you were interviewing the Louth manager this evening, Nathan, he would say, well, they would have been reasonably impressed. We held on to the ball. Of old, Kilkenny might have got the ball and played like hurling, kicked it as far as they could when they got the ball. But we tried to work it out. We tried to work it down the field. We tried to, play like football. And as I said to one or two others earlier, we were hurling people trying to look after football. So I've never been to a football training session in another county. I've never seen football being coached. So we were trying to coach it off of television or off of being at matches that we've seen ourselves rather than having everything perfect. And at the end of the day, we went out and we were competitive. Yeah,
who were you watching? Who were the managers, the coaches, whose styles and systems you liked and you thought, actually, maybe we can take something from this?
Well, I have to be, very honest. Jim Gavin came down and gave us a great coaching session last year, and he was delighted to come down. And whatever we picked up from there. But, Mickey Hart is a hero of mine. Like Eamon Fitzmaurice, I just like to see the attitude, but and then try and impart it onto the field. But, not that it was hard work, but when you're trying to change your mind, if you're a hurler, and all of our lads are hurlers, and every one of them had ambitions of being on the Kilkenny minor hurling this year, bar I think 2. Right, so everyone else had ambitions, so they're all hurlers. So to try and change a mindset from being able to strike a ball 80 or 90 yards out of defence to actually hand passing it and foot kicking it maybe 10 yards or 15 yards and working it out and holding on to possession was a different mindset completely. But before that, before you can do any of that, Nathan, you have to be able to coach, or you have to be able to learn. If you're the young fella that's learning, you have to be able to learn to kick it. You have to be able to learn to catch it. You have to be able to learn to hand pass it. So all that had to be brought into it along the way as well. But I would give our young fellas and our parents of the young fellas fantastic admiration, because I'm not saying the clubs didn't promote it. We had 16 clubs involved in that minor setup, but certainly the parents, there was no expenses over the last 3 years. There was no meals after training. There was no meals after the couple of matches that we did get to play. So there was nothing. And to be honest, and I understand this, when we looked for challenge matches, we couldn't really get them because we were only Kilkenny football. So, Waterford, in fairness to them, played us, and Carlow a couple of times played us. And then we played in a tournament there back in January. So other than that, we probably have played 5 matches or 6 matches in the 3 years. So, like going into Tuesday night, we were just hoping, and although you're always hoping at the end of the day a victory will come, we were just absolutely hoping that we could be competitive. And the Louth goalkeeper, Fairduce, made 2 great saves, point-blank saves on the night. Now, I'm not saying we should have won that game, but it could have been even a closer game on the night. Now, forget that they might have hit a few wides themselves. We're forgetting that altogether. From our point of view, if we had to get those couple of goals, it could have been a very, very exciting on the night.
And the skills you're talking about there that you're having to teach the players, are they playing club level under 12, 13, 14s? Is it just there hasn't been this inter-county outlet, so they haven't been playing any football at any stage on the way up?
No, so we're every other football county, and I'm sure hurling, if you go to a hurling county that's trying to promote football like ourselves, so we might get them once a week. Well, we were training for the last 6 months twice a week, but we might get them once a week. Well, the other 2 nights of that week they're training with their clubs hurling. So it's gone back to, so there would have been little or no football, maybe 1 match in a championship, or very little. A lot of clubs didn't play in it. So it would have been hard, but you have to give these guys they're the credit, because Nathan, when you're in a place like Kilkenny, or maybe if you go to Louth, who we played the other night, and fellas are trying to promote hurling, that mightn't be the greatest thing in the world either. But when you're trying to promote it, you have to give great credit, because they're on a hiding to nothing. If we were beaten by 20 points the other night or 30 points the other night, it would have been that Kilkenny football and all this, but it would have been the young fellas who put in a great effort all along and put their own necks on the line all along. And I would say, give me young fellas who are prepared to do that, or give me anyone that's prepared to do that, because my opinion is, and I've won All Ireland, and this is not about me at hurling. I've won All Ireland at handball, but it's not all about winning. At an elite level, yes, probably, but at other levels, it's not about winning. But It's how you can apply yourself and what attitude you have. And are you prepared to be able to take a few beatings to actually develop your sport? And give me that any day over a young fella who will not play hurling or not play football or not play soccer because you know what, we're not good enough.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, you can't be good enough if you're not prepared to get in there, muck around, get stuck in, and when you take a beating, improve from the beating.
Yeah, I think pretty much all the research shows that kids just want to go out and participate and have fun and enjoy their sport. What you're talking about there, and maybe where it can go from here, and I know Nate Quinn at the time of that beating from Wexford in 2016, was very apologetic, said we're not able to get football in Kilkenny to where we want it to be. Where do you think this can go? Because the culture that's in Kilkenny from hurling, and everybody wants to be a Kilkenny hurler growing up, any young sports person, but the culture that's there of working hard, of participating, of training hard, the level of community involvement, there can only be 30 players, say, on a Kilkenny senior panel or a Kilkenny minor panel. That leaves an awful lot of very talented athletes at a loss for participating at a reasonable level. Is that what you're trying to tap into, and do you think that's something you can actually tap into a bit more over the coming years?
Well, I suppose there's a few things, Nathan, without going deep into it. First of all, if you were to take primary schools football in Kilkenny, I would say we would be able to compete with most counties because there's a season. From September to March, there's no hurling in primary schools. It's all football. Now, the cynics will turn around and say, oh, that's because it's over the winter. And it's actually given 2 seasons. So you have a football season and you have a hurling season. So I would say that at that level. Now, then if you can develop it on and say, well, right, you know what, continue to play your football and continue to play your hurling, continue to play your soccer, continue to play rugby or athletics or boxing or whatever. Don't give anything up. Continue to do it until such time as, you know what, you're an elite athlete at something. Now you have to make your decision. I would say if someone could follow on after ourselves. Now, Nathan, for someone like me or someone in my position, right, and that's hundreds of thousands of people around the country, there's only a certain time because there's a burnout even at our level. So the most important thing is people might get inspiration, as in management and coaches and selectors and whoever else, water carriers, can come along and say, you know what, I'd like to be involved there. Well, then maybe they can take the under-14s next, and someone else can take an under-12s and someone else. Now, unless that happens, and unless that happens right throughout the country, it's not just Kilkenny, unless that happens right throughout the country in all sports, it dies, because I can't keep it going forever. I have Kilkenny under-21s, I have 3 teams at my local club level at underage level, and that's not the sense. Sometime in the next couple of years, I have to take a complete break from sport because it's needed. Yeah. And
is that happening, DJ? Are those coaches starting to come forward? Is this going to be a one-off of having a minor team in, or are there people there at 16s, 14s that are going to continue this through?
Nathan, look, at the end of the day, someone needs to follow on. We have that, please God. We have an under 14/15 management team. 16 of this year's panel are underage for next year, albeit they're all hurlers as well, with ambitions of playing on the Kilkenny minor hurling team. So the success will be if we can get other people, adults and players involved, and maybe get them at a younger level involved, and see, because we've a dressing room. We did dressing room the other night of very proud young fellas. In the sense of one of our first matches under 14 a couple of years ago, I think we got beaten 4-23 to maybe 3 or 4 goals. We were good going forward and we were struggling going back. So we've come on a long, long way since then. Now, that's not guaranteed. With Wicklow and Kildare to come, Nathan, I hope we can be as competitive as we were the other night, and I hope that we'll stick to the plan that we've put in place, or certainly the coaching that we've put in place.
At the moment, the Kilkenny senior team take part in the British Junior Championship. Where do you see this ending in 5-10 years' time? Do you think Kilkenny can get a team back in a Leinster Football Championship?
Well, at the end of the day, Nathan, we're a hurling county, and with everyone playing it, are ambitious, hurlers. I admire those guys who are in that championship, because you know what? Again, they're playing against the tide. Again, it's we haven't got players. But if we were to look at it overall at the moment, most of the country, even some of people in Kilkenny, or a lot of people in Kilkenny, we don't have the players at senior hurling level. We don't have it. We were not going to compete, but we do have the players at every level. At every level. Now at senior hurling, it's elite, and it'll be, at the end of the day, it'll be down to attitude and how far they can go and all of that. But we do have the players in football. There's a very decent Kilkenny senior, junior, intermediate football championship going on all the time. If there's a will, there's a way. So you know what? There's 30 guys on a senior Kilkenny hurling panel. You know what? There's at least another 30 to 40 guys that could be playing very decent football. And let it start at whatever the junior All-Ireland Championship is, and take it from there.
I heard a very strong rumour that one Tommy Walsh was togging out for the Tullaroan football team.
And would you believe it, Nathan? I had my own gear the same day in case Gordon were stuck. And I was mad for action, and I saw too many players going in, so I left the gear in the boot. But the bold Tommy togged out, and I'll tell you, he was as boisterous and as good and as athletic as ever, and towards the end of the game, he was still going as strong. I don't doubt it.
DJ, great stuff. Thanks a lot for taking the call, and best of luck over the next couple of matches.
Thanks a lot.